Hello there, all you beautiful souls. Welcome to Human Design Alchemy. I'm Marianne, and today we're delving into the incredible world of human design and how it can transform you. Now, if you're new here, make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell for more content. All right, let's jump in. The human design is all about understanding who you are as a unique person. It really is here so that you can bring your own unique and special brand of magic out into the world. So this is the aim, and there is a process to go through, so we don't instantly get there just when we find out our human design. Basically, the human design is like a little bit of a roadmap. It starts to provide some information around how we can get to be in our true magic. Now, that's not to say that you're not still going to have things to do all across your life, but it can really help you to feel like that truly magical person you're here to be. So you might ask, if that's the case, why do I find it so difficult to let go of certain things in my life that just seem to be constantly holding me back? So it could be, like procrastination. It could be fears around different things. It could be self-belief. And some of those beliefs have actually come from other people through conditioning that you've received because of your design. So there's lots of different ways that can actually make it difficult for us to step in to our true selves, our true empowered selves. Maybe you're actually one of those people who has been doing their human design experiment for a while. And perhaps you find yourself feeling like you still haven't quite stepped into your true genius. And I don't know what that can be like. I've been in my experiment now for a number of years, and there's still a lot of things that I'm unpacking about how to be in my highest energy for most of the time, because we never get there all the time. So, if you know lots of stuff about your design, so your type, your strategy, your authority, and you're actually using your strategy and your authority, you know what your profile persona is like, and it's working with ease out in the world. And all of these things seem like they should be taking you further forward. But there's still this little sense that you're not quite being able to fully embrace being you. Perhaps that's taken you, like it did with me, to go deeper and deeper into the centers, the channels, and the gates. And I think as we go through each of these different levels, we definitely do reach into new areas. We stretch ourselves further. We become more empowered to be ourselves. But, we're here to learn as well. And sometimes we can get caught up very much in allowing our mind to guide us. And this is, particularly if you've been in your experiment for a while, this is not something that we are consciously aware of doing. Basically, our mind uses triggers like our fears, some of those beliefs that we've taken on through our conditioning, some of our life experiences. All of those different things can be used by the mind to keep us going back to it as a source. So we can actually have other tools that are not explicitly shown within our human design chart as tools that can help us. Now, these are what I generally just called asteroids, but we're talking about a whole range of other bodies that are floating around in our solar system that also have an influence on our energy. Now, because they're not part of our charts, often we're not even aware of them. And sometimes, even if even if we become aware of them, we're not fully understanding how we can actually use them as a way to move closer and closer, further and further along our little pathway of, understanding who we truly are, unpacking all of those things. So the reason why they can be such a powerful influence goes back to one of the underlying principles of human design. So we know that human design is, an amalgamation of a number of different things. And one of the things that we get from the scientific world is the idea of neutrinos. I've got to say, the neutrinos fascinate me. I've done lots of research into the research on neutrinos done by scientists to try and understand them. And what I know for sure is that the scientists have probably not even touched, the smallest little dot of what the neutrinos are actually about. So this is where sometimes we can see that there is a greater intelligence within human design that is created by bringing all these parts together. Anyway, the neutrinos, just generally speaking, bring an influence of the things that are in our solar system into our lives, into our energy. Now, I suspect I'm going to do a more detailed video about the neutrinos at some time in the near future. So do make sure that you are subscribing so you get updates on that if you're interested in them, because they're fascinating. Anyway, so basically there's a lot more going on than just what's in our natal human design charts, is what I'm trying to say. And these other bodies, which I'm just going to call asteroids, because that's a bit quicker than all of the different things they are, what they have an impact on us. And they can actually really help us to understand how we've been conditioned, understand what some of our beliefs are, and also give us an extra little energy burst, power, insight, whatever, into getting through some of these things as well. So I do like to tell stories, so let me give you a little bit of a personal story to start off. So the first asteroid that I ever heard about was Chiron. And I heard about this when I had my detailed human design reading done. Now, the person who was doing the reading talked about how I had gate 63 in Chiron, which meant that I would be likely to struggle with self-doubt and that this would have originated from my mother. So this is all fairly standard kind of stuff around Chiron. I've delved into it a little bit more than that, I did that as a way to understand more about what was going on, but more about that. So now, her talking about self-doubt rang true. Self-doubt is something that I have absolutely dealt with across my life. I had no problem with that. But some of the other things I'm kind of going, why is she actually talking about Chiron? I'm here to get my human design chart read. There's no Chiron in my human design chart because I didn't have it at that point. And when I look at my chart, this gate 63 isn't activated in my chart. Now, just as a side note, that's not always the case. Sometimes your Chiron gate is also a gate somewhere else that is defined in your chart. But in my case, gate 63 wasn't. And she was talking about all of this stuff, and I'm going, I don't get what she's talking about this for. I really don't get it. And I kind of said, okay, yeah, self-doubt, cool. I didn't dwell on it. My line one didn't go, let's go diving further. But I did begin to notice more and more that there was this increasing mention within the human design community around getting a chart that included your Chiron. So with that in mind, when I went into my next round of reader trainings for human design, I actually asked the trainer during one of our live calls, if it's possible to know where Chiron is sitting and we can sort of add that information to our chart, why doesn't Chiron then show up in the body graph? I was really curious to know. And my sister, who's a bit of an astrologer, also kind of got me curious as to why this part was missing, if it was so important. There's books around Chiron and its impact and all these kinds of things. She didn't have an answer for me. So anytime someone doesn't have an answer to one of my questions, that's like a trigger to my line 1 to go deep, deep, deep. So I went diving into the deepest depths of human design that I can go in. First of all, to try and figure out why Chiron wasn't, something that was defined or activated, shown as being activated in my body graph. But in part of my deep dive, I discovered that Chiron was only the tip of the iceberg in terms of all the other asteroids. Well, Chiron's not really an asteroid, so stay tuned. I'm about to do a video on Chiron specifically. But anyway, asteroids, minor planets, which is another name for asteroids, dwarf planets, centaurs, all sorts of things. There's lots and lots of different names and different things out there floating around, circling around the sun that do have an influence on our design. Now, one answer I found, I won't go into depth at this point, was that basically the most powerful influences on us show up on our body graph. So that's why we've got the gates that are in those specific planets that have had, planets as in includes things like sun and earth, but, planets in terms of astrology, that's why they're there. So I had the answer to my first question, but now I'm going, well, hang on, what about all these other asteroids, all these other things? How are they actually influencing us? And how can we actually use that knowledge as part of stepping into our true empowered self? Because for me, it always comes back to, how does it happen? Yeah, there's knowledge there, but how do I use it? So to continue my story, I went back to Chiron to see if I could get some answers. Now, at that point, I found out that I didn't just have Chiron in gate 63, but I also had it in gate 22, which is an interesting thing because gate 22 for me is actually activated in my chart. So there were some interesting things to unpack around that. Now, gate 63 in its lowest expression is definitely about self-doubt. So I could see how that happened, that she would say that. Gate 22 is actually called the gate of grace. And essentially in its lowest expression, if you think about it being about the opposite of grace, so like disgrace, in other words, being impulsive, speaking out of turn, emoting all over the place, doing those kinds of things that push others away. So tick, 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 tick. Yes, absolutely was happening in my life. So I explored this a bit further, looked into both of these gates, and I could see that, my actions, my beliefs, all these kinds of things, they did actually seem to go back to wounds that I received from my family, but it wasn't quite as the reader had told me. In actual fact, it was my father that made me doubt myself far more than my mother. But I also have, so some of you will be aware because I've talked about it before, I've got an older sister. Now, she's a 5-1. That line 5 meant that everyone in the family saw her as this golden child, whereas I was seen as the one who lacked in grace. So the graceless one, the disgraceful one, in comparison to my sister. So all of that fed into my self-doubt and some other beliefs that I, essentially created at that young age about myself. So knowing this has allowed me to actually make very specific changes. So I'd already been on a, self-development journey. That's how I got into human design anyway. But this became much more targeted. And essentially out of this came my expanded version of mind Reiki, so what I call HD mind Reiki, which has become very powerful in releasing some of these things. So I have not by no any means finished my search into this, but it's by looking at the asteroids that I've realized the truth in the statement is that there are no coincidences in life. There's always something sitting in the background. All right. So if you are ready to delve deeper into your human design, to see the influence of Chiron, maybe some of the other, bodies floating around in the solar system, have you considered having a personalized human design reading? So having this reading can really help to unpack some of the things that you've been struggling with in your life. It's a great starting point. Now, another thing that you can do is to join our community of like-minded souls to share your insights, connect with others on a similar journey. And you can do this in the Facebook group, Living by Your Human Design. Have you just started out with human design? I have got a crazy special for you. You can get a 20-minute distant human design reading for only $22 Australian. So that's about $15 US and around about £11 UK. Crazy stuff. And you get lots of things to help you get started with your human design. Okay, so are you excited about all of the possibilities? If you are, just hit the button and share your thoughts in the comments. And then stay tuned for more on how human design and the asteroids can be a tool for your own transformation. All right, until next time, I want you to stay curious, stay aligned, and I'll see you in the next video.